Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com. Hope you're having a great Sunday with your family. Wanted to talk to you about 10 takeaways following Alabama's 49-7 victory over Southern Miss. The Crimson Tide now improved to 4-0 on the season. Next week, they take on Ole Miss. On Sunday, every Sunday, I provide 10 takeaways. I'm going to do that via podcast, but you can read the complete written edition back on BamaInsider.com. And I like to start out with the stats. Big stat guy. And as we look at the offensive stats and the production put up yesterday by Tua Tagovailoa, we see that once again, balled out, had an incredible field day, 17 of 21, 293 yards, 5 touchdowns, a rating of, get this, 276.7. Incredible performance yet again. And I think that he continues to set himself apart in the college football world. You're talking about one of the top quarterbacks, not only in the country, but one of the top passing quarterbacks that we've seen in the last several years. As I mentioned, the 293 yards, completely incredible. But check this out. Tagovailoa has accumulated nearly 6,000 yards passing in 28 career games to rank 5th all-time at Alabama already. And his 5 touchdown passes against Southern Miss not only tied his career high, but also marked the 9th time he has thrown for 4 or more touchdowns in a game during his career. Now, on the season overall, get this. Tagovailoa has thrown for 1,300 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. Talk about balling out. Tagovailoa continues to really demonstrate not only improvement each week, but I think he's also demonstrating the fact that him and Sarkisian have such a good continuity weekly. And I think Sarkisian's short passing tree, we've talked about this again and again, has allowed for Tua to take advantage of these RPOs and hit his receivers over the middle of the field and to allow his receivers to really excel in space. And I think it's allowed Tua, if you can believe it, to be even more efficient than last year. I mean, there's been a lot of comparable numbers from last year to this year, and you just see a complete growth, not only stats-wise, but development-wise as well. Moving on, my second point is Henry Ruggs is absolutely on fire. And I open with this. Which Alabama receiver is not on fire? Maybe that's the better question, right? Over the last 2 weeks, Henry Ruggs has really turned heads with his incredible 4.2 speed, and he's racked up some serious yardage. Check this out. In the last 2 games, Ruggs has caught for 10 receptions, 270 yards, 3 touchdowns. His per-catch average against South Carolina and Southern Miss, 27.0 yards per catch, with touchdowns from 81 and 71 yards out. Let's add to that. Ruggs racked up another 141 yards of total offense with 2 additional touchdowns against New Mexico State, which includes that electrifying pass that it was behind the line of scrimmage that he took to the house for 75 yards on the first play of the game. Everyone knows about Jerry Jeudy, rightfully so. But Ruggs is another NFL future first-round draft pick that will be an exceptional addition to any NFL roster. Quotable, here's Ruggs after the game. Coach Saban always says, get downhill. So that's the first thing I'm thinking when I grab the football and get downhill. When I see space, I trust my speed. That's Henry Ruggs. Let's actually listen to a clip. This is from Tua Tagovailoa. I don't want to get away from this. And this is what he had to say following his 293-yard performance with 5 touchdowns.
There's a lot. There's a lot of things I need to fix. There's been a lot of miscommunication, and I think the 2-3 and outs that we had, it was a testament of us not doing things correctly and the miscommunications that we've had. So, it's an opportunity for us to learn from it, grow from it, and I think we finished a lot better.
That was Tua Tagovailoa following Alabama's 49-7 victory over Southern Miss. You're listening to Kyle Henderson at BamaInsider.com. I will have my call-in show Sunday night, 8:30 p.m. So be sure in joining the show. Call in. Call-in number is 205-686-3604. Moving along, Najee Harris posts his first 100-yard rushing performance of the season. And I thought it was a very good performance from Najee Harris. And this is what Nick Saban said after the game. I felt we ran the football okay. for the first time of the season. As mentioned, the Crimson Tide had someone go over the 100-yard mark, which is pretty interesting. But then again, you look at this team collectively and you understand that they are an air-it-out type team, especially, with the dynamic wide receivers that they have on the outside. And Saban said it before, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Saban continued. I thought Najee did a really sort of rolled up in there, ran with a lot of toughness. B-Rob did the same thing. So I thought it was better today. On the season, Harris has rushed for 45 attempts, 266 yards, which is with one touchdown, which is a 5.9 yard per average carry, compared to Brian Robinson's 3.8 per carry average. Harris has also caught 7 receptions for 104 yards with 3 touchdowns. I have a clip right here. This is Chris Owens, and he's talking about Alabama's offensive line and the run game.
Yeah, I mean, once we hit a big run, we just want to keep pounding them. But like I said, we just want to keep improving. And, if we run the plays that's called and it's called, we're going to execute it.
Short and sweet from Chris Owens. What do you guys think about his performance through the first couple games? Kind of curious to get your assessment on the Alabama offensive line. Here's actually Nick Saban in his opening remarks, following Alabama's 49-7 victory over Southern Miss.
Well, I was really pleased with early start, guys coming out of the box, and we scored the first 4 times we had the ball in the game. I think the defense played well early in the game and, got them stopped. I'd say the only negative is, we didn't finish the first half very well. We had a couple 3-and-outs on offense, let them go 2 minutes and score. But we cut down on the penalties today. I thought we executed a lot better. The defense saw a lot of stuff that, they had to adjust to in the game, and I thought did a fairly good job of that. We got to play a lot of players. It was good that we came out in the second half after they scored right before the half and sort of reestablished the tempo of the game by coming out and scoring first drive. And so, there's a lot of good things in the game, but like always, I'm sure when we look at the film, every player should, look at it like, what could I do better? What are my vulnerabilities? What are people down the road going to see that I need to correct? And that's what we'll, kind of go to work on. But I was glad that we got to play a lot of players today, and we're, just got to keep focusing on improving. And but there's a lot of reasons that the players could have not played well today, and I was really pleased with the fact that they were ready to play and got after it and tried to sort of build on the identity that we're trying to build, as a team.
That was Nick Saban following Alabama's victory over Southern Miss. You're listening to Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com, talking about my 10 takeaways following Alabama's 4th victory of the season, as we continue looking at the offense overall and just what they've done under Steve Sarkisian. And statistically speaking, Alabama, their offense is straight rolling. The Crimson Tide is averaging 50 points per game, is averaging 25.5 first downs per game, is averaging 550 yards per game, 371 yards passing per game, 178 yards rushing per game. And when we dig a little bit more inside those numbers, we see that Alabama is averaging 8.2 yards per play, has turned the football over just twice, 1 football, 1 interception, has a third down conversion percentage of 52.0, and is 6 for 6 on 4th down conversions. And one of the most impressive stats this season is through the first 4 games, the fact that Alabama is 15 of 16 inside the red zone, which is a scoring percentage of 94%. And I know that's something that Alabama certainly wanted to improve on going into the 2019 season. I think we all knew that last season Alabama really stalled out in the red zone. Thought the end of the season their red zone production wasn't where it needed to be. And Sarkisian was even criticized about his red zone offense with the Atlanta Falcons. And I think that's one of the areas that a lot of people were curious to see what would happen inside the red zone. And I've been impressed with what Alabama has been able to do. And I think that's only going to continue this year. I think they have a good philosophy inside the red zone. There's a lot of weapons. And, of course, you have Tua Tagovailoa. Let's talk about the defense now. And I thought overall the defense did a really good job. I thought they played a complete game. And here's an excerpt from my 10 takeaways on BamaInsider.com. While Southern Mississippi is far from a top 25 team on offense, they presented some challenges. There's a lot of speed on the field, but the Crimson Tide was able to limit big plays and surrender just 1 touchdown on the day, and it felt like it was an improved overall performance. As you know, 2 freshmen started on the defensive line, DJ Dell at tackle and Justin Ebogbe, who got his first start at defensive end. subbing in for injured LeBron Ray. Dell fared well early on, and he was actually injured in the first half, and what Saban referred to a patella tendon injury. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. And it looked like Abogbe, held his own. I think he's one of those guys from the class 2019 that's certainly going to continue to fare well. It's really amazing to think about all these freshmen that are playing right now, and I'll touch on that in just a second. I thought the inside linebackers really improved. Shane Lee and Christian Harris. Christian Harris especially. I think he's been more up and down, where Shane Lee has been more even keeled throughout this season. But those two freshmen, they combined for 11 tackles yesterday. Anthony Jennings, I think, is obviously Alabama's top pass rusher right now. He recorded his 3rd sack on the season, and I think the secondary did a good job yesterday. Jared Maiden, who almost looked sometimes slow at times. I don't know if it was because of Southern Miss is very fast, but he did have 8 tackles yesterday. I know he was playing with a big brace on his knee, but I guess we'll have to dig into that a little bit more. Trayvon Diggs records his 2nd interception of the season. You can't go. It's going to be, I think, when I watched that game last night from Georgia and Notre Dame, I think that one of the things that really stood out to me is the fact that Georgia really liked to go take advantage of one-on-one situations. And I think with Alabama, the fact that they have Surtain and they have Diggs, it'd be interesting who they put at star, because, those Georgia receivers are very talented. And I'm curious to see how Alabama's corners can match up with some very physical wide receivers. But I think Diggs and Surtain should just do fine. And I think Diggs has really been playing lights out. Same for Surtain. Did you know the Crimson Tide has held opponents to 10 or less in 32 in their last 63 dating to the start of the 2015 season? Pretty impressive. Alabama's defense, very stout. Nick Saban talked about the defense. I think the plays they made on us today were things that we didn't execute well. The wheel route that they hit right before half, that set up a score, and the penalty added on to that. They gave them ball inside the red zone. Somebody has to get the guy man to man. You have got to play them, and it's a throwback boot. I think they played better today. We were simpler in terms of the plan to adjust that they wanted to make in the game, which I think helped the young players especially. That's Nick Saban. You can read or watch his press conference on BamaInsider.com. As I talked about, there's a ton of freshmen playing on this team, and you've heard it before. True freshmen do not play at Alabama. Well, on Saturday against Southern Miss, check this out. The Crimson Tide started, seven true freshmen from the class 2019. Left guard Evan Neal, defensive tackle DJ Dell, inside linebacker Shane Lee, and Christian Harris, along with kicker Will Reichard, all started for their 4th consecutive game. Jordan Battle earned his 2nd start of the season at safety in Alabama's dime package, and making his first start of the season, as I said earlier, is Justin Abogbe, subbing in for injured LeBron Ray at the defensive end position. In total this season, 18 true freshmen have earned playing time. Now, remember, the new NCAA rule states that you can play 4 games and still keep your red shirt. So those first guys that I mentioned, Evan Neal, DJ Dell, Shane Lee, Christian Harris, Will Reichard, if those guys play one more game, then the season is counted. So, they can no longer redshirt, which is probably going to be the case. I mean, if those guys are already starting, there's no need to redshirt them, right? My 7th point going into week 5 is Deontay Brown returns this week. 6'4", 342-pound offensive guard Deontay Brown, is done serving his 4-game suspension. I think it's going to be interesting to see if he can crack that offensive line top 5. Is he one of Alabama's top 5 linemen? Well, he ended the season last year as one of the top linemen and really helped with the running game. And, there's been times where Evan Neal has struggled. So is Deontay Brown going to leapfrog him and start at that position? I guess time will tell, but we'll be watching that on practice starting on Monday. As we continue on my 10 takeaways following Alabama's 49-7 victory over Southern Miss, injuries continue to hamper this team. Now, every program in college football is going to deal with key injuries, nagging injuries as the season progresses. However, Alabama seems to be dealing with key injuries faster compared to most teams in college football. Coming into the season, the Tide lost coming into this game, the Crimson Tide lost defensive end LeBron Ray to a foot injury. Nick Saban said he could be out as long as 6 weeks before he gets back in the swing of things. Inside linebacker Joshua McMillan, Dylan Moses, as you know, out with the season, ACL injuries. Those would have been Alabama's inside linebackers. Hard to fathom that those guys are out, right? Five-star freshman Trey Sanders, the running back, out for the season, suffering a foot injury during fall camp. And on Saturday, more injury news developed. Freshman kicker Will Reichert suffered what Saban said was a pulled hip flexor and is questionable for next week against Ole Miss. DJ Dell suffered a patella tendon injury. He's also dealt with that knee injury. So, he's been dealing with some nagging injuries to start the season. And then Terrell Lewis, who missed the last 2 seasons. This is probably the most interesting one. He's dealing with a hyperextended knee, which Alabama had to keep him out against Southern Miss for precautionary measures. Now, obviously, one of Alabama's top pass rushers is Terrell Lewis. But, over the last couple years, he's just been he's been injury plagued, right? And now he's dealing with another injury. I'm sure Alabama fans are frustrated. They want to see more pass rush from him. I do myself. But the kid's got to stay healthy. I think, replacing him, probably going to be Chris Allen in this next game, who I think has done a really great job. But I don't think this injury revolving around Terrell Lewis is serious. I don't even know if he'd play against Ole Miss. And you got to look at it from the schedule. With a lot of these injuries, Alabama has Ole Miss. They'll be probably double-digit favorite against the Rebels. And then following that game, they have an open week, be another opportunity for those guys to get healthy. And then they got the big one in College Station against Texas A&M. And another guy we didn't even touch on was Markel Benton. He wasn't dressed yesterday, so I think he was injured in some capacity, so we'll have to follow up on that as the week continues into week 5. All right, rounding out on my points 9 and 10 on my 10 takeaways following Alabama's 49-7 victory over Southern Miss. I feel this team is still untested. I know they're 4-0, but the strength of schedule, in my opinion, it's been very weak. What did we really learn from Duke? What did we learn against New Mexico State? Yeah, we knew the offense was going to be explosive. We knew that some freshmen were going to dip in. We knew that the defense was going to have new faces. But what did we learn? I think they were challenged against South Carolina in Columbia. But I think, the secondary had an opportunity to show what they're capable of. But what did we learn against Southern Miss? I think, these first couple games have just allowed for guys to gain some experience, and which is very important. But how is this team going to respond when they're punched in the mouth? And we really don't know that. And is there a challenger looming on the horizon? Ole Miss doesn't fit that bill. Texas A&M, they looked average, if anything, against Auburn yesterday. Tennessee looks like a disaster. Arkansas hasn't beaten Alabama since 2006. So we might have to wait until November 9th when LSU comes to Tuscaloosa, right? And that should be an absolute showdown. Joe Burrow completely balling out. But then again, Alabama has blanked LSU in their last 2 or 3 meetings. And LSU hasn't beaten Alabama since 2011. So I don't know. My last point, 10 takeaways from Alabama's victory. I kind of looked at the whole college football spectrum. And I'm asking, which teams could test or challenge the Crimson Tide? Kind of made a case for, a case against, made it quick. You can read this on BamaInsider.com. Could it be Clemson? Yeah, I think that's obvious, right? The 2 programs are 2-2 since the 2016 season, and the Crimson Tide still has Trevor Lawrence. The case against Trevor Lawrence has looked less than stellar to start the season. When you look at his numbers compared to other top quarterbacks, Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence is way down there. He doesn't have that good of a passing rating. Georgia's the next team I listed. The case for Kirby Smart has been close to being the first former assistant under Saban to beat Nick Saban head-to-head. He's had Saban on the ropes the last couple of seasons, but Saban's been able to bounce off those ropes with the backup quarterback. Georgia is physically loaded. I think we saw what they're capable of playing in front of their home crowd, which looked electric, by the way. I wish, I can't wait for Brian Denny to get that way. Will it get that way? Jake Fromm, I feel, is a very good quarterback. They got a really good run game, got very physical wide receivers. They got a good defense. They play opportunistic football. The case against, as I said, Georgia has choked twice against Alabama, and you got to think that, Saban is renting space up top and Kirby's head for free. Playing the GOAT, you want to beat him so bad, but Nick Saban just continues to figure out ways to stay tops in the SEC. LSU is the next team that I feel could challenge or test the Crimson Tide. The case for Joe Burrow, the LSU offense has looked completely unstoppable. The case against Orgeron's had a tough time going head-to-head against Saban, and we've seen LSU look like a contender before until Saban and the Crimson Tide flex on their rival from the West. Oklahoma, the case for Jalen Hurts and that Oklahoma offense, completely explosive, completely dynamic. The case against the Oklahoma defense. I mean, we saw it last year in the Orange Bowl. Alabama pretty much did whatever they wanted to. I mean, then last year, Oklahoma had Kyler Murray, right? Is there a really big difference between Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts? I don't know. Next team on my list, Ohio State. Justin Fields, J.K. Dobbins. I mean, the complete entire Ohio State offense. It's a wicked offense. Very good. The case against, I think, as we've seen in the past, usually one of these teams from the Big Ten slips up towards the end of the year. Wisconsin, I could see beating Ohio State, which eliminates Ohio State from the college football playoff. I don't know. What do you think? Is their defense good enough? Probably. Auburn is the next team on my list. And I think Auburn is probably the most likely of this group. Number one, they're already on the schedule. And they've had success in the past. The last couple of years, Clemson and Auburn are the two teams to beat Alabama. And what have those teams had in common? They both had a very good, very superior defensive line. I mean, a couple of years ago, I've never seen Alabama's offensive line get completely manhandled. Auburn did just that. And add to that, Gus Malzahn has been able to beat Nick Saban in 2 out of 5 tries. Lastly, Alabama's on the road playing at Jordan-Hare. Very tough environment. We've seen it before. The case against the Tigers, start a freshman at quarterback. And I think if Alabama has a pass rush and they can really get to the quarterback, that's going to be a tall task for Bo Nix to beat Alabama, no matter where it's at, even if it's at home. I mean, you put heat on a true freshman and you look at the two quarterbacks head-to-head, Tua Tagovailoa versus Bo Nix. Look at the amount of experience and the amount of talent that Tua has compared to Bo Nix. I mean, I know they got Seth Williams on the outside, but you got Judy, Waddle, Ruggs, Devontae Smith, too many weapons on the outside, and I don't know if Auburn can beat Alabama in a head-to-head track meet this season. Wisconsin threw them in there, thought, they dominated Michigan, and they got a very solid running game. Alabama, has been able to fare well against teams that run the football, however, but Jonathan Taylor, the real deal, ran for 203 yards with 2 scores against the Wolverines. The case against, same thing with any Big Ten team, You never know if one of these teams coming out from the Big Ten is serious or not. Hey, if you like this type of content, be sure and like and subscribe right here on YouTube and give us an opportunity at BamaInsider.com. I'll catch you guys tonight, 8:30 p.m. Central Time for the call-in show. Hope you enjoyed 10 takeaways with myself, Kyle Henderson. Catch you guys soon. Have a great Sunday with your family. Be easy. Take it easy. Catch you guys soon on BamaInsider.com.